Why does this government treat Alberta like a fart in the room that nobody wants to talk about or acknowledge?
Interrupt my friend in her speech, but I heard her say a word that I know is distinctly unparliamentary, and I think she may want to withdraw it. The word was F-A-R-T.
Are you serious, Mr. Speaker? Like, is my colleague actually serious? I just gave an impassioned speech about supporting Alberta jobs, and that's what the leader of a political party stands up and has to say? No, I don't withdraw it.
The honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
I have a lot to say about the content of my friend's speech. I am deeply concerned, as are all people in this place, for Canadians who are hurting from economic downturn. I would like to speak to that, but the first important... Excuse me.
Mr. Speaker, the leader of the Green Party has been probably one of the most vocal opponents of every part of the Alberta economy for the last 10 years, so I will take no lessons from her on this.
I feel it's important to make something of the member's choice of words, is that she then accused people opposite her for reacting. And in that context, decorum is important and respect is important in this place. I remind those who are now heckling me that you are breaking the rules of this place when you do so. I have never heckled in this place, not once. And I've never used language that was unparliamentary, not once. And I recognize my friend's passion, but I do not forgive, nor do I accept.
We looked up on page 619 of the O'Brien and Bosch. I shall read what's in here. In dealing with unparliamentary language, the Speaker takes into account the tone, manner, and intention of the member speaking, the person whom the words at issue were directed, and it goes on. What I'm going to say is that sometimes in this chamber, passion takes over and it gets kind of heated, and sometimes we say things out of order or things that may not be parliamentary. The honourable member said a couple of things that were bordering, but it's up to her to decide whether they were unparliamentary. Someone took offence. I will take it under advisement, bring it back to the table, and we'll go from there.
Yes, that's right. Don't worry about anything whatsoever, because there will be no farts in the wind here. But then again, if there is, what the hell? That's why we call it a free-for-all. No beans allowed, damn it. It's almost as if we probably should have had that scene from Blazing Saddles in here with everybody gathered around the campfire. It would have been perfect. What really would be perfect is if the American government could do things like that. Can you imagine somebody getting all upset in an American governmental setting in the Senate? If somebody dropped a fart, if somebody said the word fart? My God, George Carlin once said the 7 words you can't say on television, and actually, he added 3 words later. He had the 7 words, and then he added 3, because he said he basically had to redo it. And in his 3, fart was in there. I'm not going to say the other 2. Well, I could, but I'm not going to. Go look them up, because he had the 3 in there. So dropping no farts, and hopefully everybody who's on the dais today has not had beans for lunch. Hi, once again, everybody. I'm Ed Berliner. Welcome in to the Fart in the Wind, if you will. This is your latest edition of the Free-for-All, where, quite frankly, anything goes at any given time. Why? Because we can do it, and because, simply put, that's what the media is today. Let's go ahead and bring everybody in here. First of all, my first guest, he is a veteran announcer of Major League Soccer. He has been doing sports for many, many years as well, like all of us here. And he continues to call himself the smartest-looking man in sports television today. Bruce Silverman joins us on the Free-for-All. There you go, Bruce. Now, I read that exactly as you gave it to me. How'd I do?
The fact that I never wrote anything to you, I think that you're ideal in what you read. Of course, I'm the smartest guy in sports right now. And after watching what goes on in Canada, I think they're a hell of a lot more civilized than we are south of the border.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to make sure that everybody knew, because if the worst case scenario happened, if we had people talking about farts in the wind, I think we'd be a whole lot better off. My next guest, everybody in South Florida knows him. And as a matter of fact, it was interesting on my Facebook page a while back. I came up with video of the 2 of us doing University of Miami baseball back, I think, in the 1780s. And it was an awesome picture because I was rocking the beard and the mustache back then. And you still would have sworn that I was something out of a caveman drawing. But if you are a South Floridian, you know him from radio, you know him from television, but you know him right now because he is wildly successful and for a long time has been doing what I consider to be the best sports talk radio show in South Florida, period. End of freaking story. Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 in the morning on 940 WINZ. It is Defo himself. Jeff DeForest joins us on the show. Defo!
How are you, Eddie B? And good to be on with you guys. Quite a distinguished panel you've assembled here today. That picture was a little bit frightening, and it reminds me anytime that you go to any reunion, whether it's 10 years, 20 years, and especially in my case now, you have a 50-year reunion going back to high school or going back to college in the 1970s. And first thing that somebody says to you is, hey, what the hell happened to you? And that's what I thought when I looked at that picture, especially on my end, Eddie B. You still look the same, so it's great to be on with you. And I was just passing some gas, so that was a very appropriate video that you played.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I'm so glad you shared that with us. Do us a favor, see if you can capture it, and then if you can actually capture the sound, what the hell, it'll be another first on this show. And a pleasure to welcome back to the show a gentleman whom I have known for many years. I have read his stuff for many years. Matter of fact, if you are a NASCAR fan, if you're a motorsports fan, you have read his material for decades because he covers other sports. Let's make that very clear. But when it comes to motorsports and NASCAR, he is truly the dean. And I use the word legendary because whether he likes it or not, it's really what people think about him, that he is a legendary journalist in covering NASCAR. Let's put it this way. Nothing happened around a NASCAR track for a whole lot of years without him knowing about it. Where he used to write for the Daytona Beach News Journal, now living the life of Riley in retirement, ladies and gentlemen, and a whole lot more. Godwin Kelly joins us today on the Free for All. How you doing, Godwin?
Hey, folks. How are you doing today? I guess I'm the only guy from Central Florida.
Well, so, no, and unfortunately, yeah, it is. You kind of just, but you have that. That's okay. You have Florida covered, so it's.
I feel like a unicorn here.
No, don't worry about it. It's the South guys. We're all Florida guys here today because the West Coast guys actually couldn't. They've got their own show, and we'll have them on sooner or later. So there's your foursome here. Now, I want everybody to just go ahead, sit back, relax, because here we go, launch into it, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Once again on the Free for All, it's showtime.
Showtime. Showtime. Showtime. Showtime. Showtime. Showtime. Showtime. Showtime.
Showtime. Showtime.
Showtime. Showtime. Showtime.
Showtime. Showtime.
Showtime.
Showtime.
Showtime. Showtime. Showtime. Showtime.
If only Raul Julia had lasted longer and done more Addams Family's movies, it would have been better. Gentlemen, I'm going to go ahead and start us off here today with something that is sticking in my craw, but also something which is absolutely perfect for the day that we gather here and the biggest news of the day. Everybody around the world, certainly in the United States right now, is talking about Simone Biles, who will not win the gold medal for the team competition at the 2021 Tokyo Olympics. And there's a tremendous amount of discussion about why she actually decided to withdraw from the competition. And once again, social media is a part of this. I'll go ahead and drop that dime here in a moment. But first of all, Simone Biles in the press conference from Tokyo where she made her announcement.
Can you talk about the technical part of that vault you tried?
Yeah.
What happened and what were you attempting and what happened?
So I was trying a 2.5 and I ended up doing a 1.5, just got a little bit lost in the air, which is really unfortunate, especially to have a score like that go up there for the team. I feel like I robbed them of a couple of tenths and we could have been a little bit higher in the rankings, but yeah, I was trying a 2.5, ended up doing a 1.5, which was definitely not my best work. So it's just something we have to go on in the gym and work on.
Timeline right here about specifically what happened. You come off, you talked to Marcia for a little bit, right? I'm trying to figure out, was it, you said they would, when back over there, you said they wouldn't let me go back out there. But did you go to them? Did you tell them, hey, I can't do this? Or did they tell you maybe you should take a break? Or how did it specifically go?
So I was like, I think the girls need to do the rest of the competition without me. And they were like, I promise you you're fine. We watched you warm up. And I said, no, I know I'm going to be fine, but I can't risk a medal for the team, so I need to call it. And you usually don't hear me say things like that because I'll usually persevere and push through things, but not to cost the team a medal. So they were like, okay, well, if Simone says this, then we need to take it pretty serious. And so I had the correct people around me to do that.
So was that the first time? So this wasn't the first time you've been in a competition where like, man, I'm not sure I'm in this today.
Yes. Today has been really stressful. We had a workout this morning. It went okay, and then just that 5.5 hour wait or something, I was just like shaking, could barely nap. I've just never felt like this going into a competition before, and I tried to go out here and have fun and warm up in the back, went a little bit better, but then once I came out here, I was like, no, mental is not there, so I just need to let the girls do it and focus on myself.
Simone, I wanted to ask you just a follow-up, and I know these are personal issues you're talking about. If you could sort of tell us, was there any injury? That was one thing we wanted to know. And if you can elaborate on maybe the stress you've been feeling. We all know when you're in the spotlight, we can imagine what it's like.
Right. Sorry. No, no injury, thankfully, and that's why I took a step back, because I didn't want to do something silly out there and get injured. So I thought it was best if these girls took over and did the rest of the job, which they absolutely did. They're Olympic silver medalists now, and they should be really proud of themselves for how well they did last minute having to go in. And it's been really stressful, this Olympic Games, I think, just as a whole, not having an audience. There are a lot of different variables going into it. It's been a long week. It's been a long Olympic process. It's been a long year. So just a lot of different variables, and I think we're just a little bit too stressed out. But we should be out here having fun, and sometimes that's not the case.
Gentlemen, we should be out here having fun, and sometimes that is just not the case. The last words that she dropped there were absolutely perfect. Social media has been lighting up today. Of course, that's always where the sewer starts to begin in a lot of ways, with so many people who are hammering away at Simone Biles. I mean, of course, there's a lot of congratulations, but some people saying, you're nothing but a quitter. What's wrong with you? This whole mental issue and mental health issue. It's not a big deal. Hey, let me drop a line here. Bullshit. Because we've seen this before, and it's happened in a lot of sports and a lot of life as well. We saw this recently with Naomi Osaka. There is a tremendous amount of pressure on these athletes, and I give her a tremendous amount of credit because she decided that she couldn't do it, that she wasn't there. And I spoke to a friend of mine who has covered gymnastics for more than 30 years earlier this week, and this person said to me, something's wrong. Because she missed a couple of vaults, she missed a couple of moments, she wasn't right on the floor exercise, something wasn't right. She's also a little bit older. Things get to her. So people need to back off a little bit. But the fact that people are out here now questioning whether or not she actually has maybe a mental health issue, maybe she's had a crisis of confidence. It happens to the greatest. And she is the greatest of all time. I think it's despicable the way some people are hammering away at her today, and I think it's got to stop. She could still be back in Paris. She is still the greatest of all time in her sport, and she deserves a little respect and a way to go ahead and say, this is it. I'm taking one for the team. Bruce Silverman, you're the new guy here on the Free For All, so I'm going to go ahead and drop this one to you first. Go ahead.
I think that we really have a mental health issue in this country, and it goes to a lot of different things. And in sports, we're just starting to see athletes come out and say, I've got an issue, I need to address it. We think that athletes are invincible and they are these physical specimens. But, look, all of us have been around sports long enough. We know that at the professional level, it's 90%, 95% mental and 5% physical. I think we're starting to see this. And she made the comment to the Today Show this morning and talked about how she just has the weight of the world on her shoulders, that she's the face of the Olympics. And I think that we need to spend more time talking about mental stability and offer more assistance to athletes, to teachers, to police officers, to every aspect of our society and get people the help they need. And, you mentioned it, and I think you're absolutely right, Ed. She is a little bit older, and maybe it's confidence. I don't know if you watched the first episode of the second season of Ted Lasso, but they talked about the yips. Maybe she had the yips. Whatever it is, I think absolutely. I think whatever it is, whatever's going on with her, I think she's earned the right for us all to stand behind her and just say, hey, thank you for being the GOAT.
He deserves the benefit of the doubt at this point, other than the assholes out there who are screaming at her right now on social media. And of course, they're always going to be out there. And a lot of them are trolls to begin with. But she has been such a perfect, let's say that, a perfect representative of the United States and the ideal of being an athlete and a team athlete, that people need to just back her up and say, we get it, Simone. We're all behind you.
I 100% agree with that. And one of the things that went through my mind, when I first heard about it was it a physical injury? Well, she's already said that it's not. So maybe, as you said, maybe it's confidence. And maybe it's simply that she doesn't believe that she can perform at the absolute height and best of her ability. And if she can't, maybe she wants someone else to take her spot.
I'll give you
and that's exactly what could happen this morning.
While we're sitting here commenting about it, maybe we all just ought to shut up a little bit, because we're not doctors. We just play one on TV. Let's just congratulate her and say what a marvelous job she did. Godwin Kelly, I'm going to come to you next on this one, because you've covered a sport which deals a lot in individuals, where the drivers in cars are in their automobiles for long stretches of time, and the tremendous amount of concentration that goes on in motorsports is phenomenal if you've never been there before. But we never hear about mental health issues on the track. But certainly, you've been around sports long enough, you know as well as I do. Sooner or later, it gets to you, no matter who you are.
Yeah. Well, that's what happened with Jimmy Johnson. Basically, he said, 2 years ago, he said, I've had it. I'm burned out. I can't do this anymore, especially on the NASCAR Cup Series, where it's like week after week after week after week for almost 10 months. And in between races, you have all these sponsorship obligations and whatnot. And I got to hand it to Jimmy Johnson, because he said, I'm tired of this. I can't do this anymore. I love racing, but I can't do this anymore. I can't keep this schedule because it's just driving me crazy. So I don't think, I think this is sort of along those lines with Simone. Obviously, there's something not right in her orbit right now. And I know nothing about gymnastics. I go back to, the old days on, I guess, ABC, and the Romanians, I think, always won, And,
well, you want to talk about pressure, because they were being hammered by the government. That's between the Romanian government,
like
the Russian government.
You get a silver and you disappear. I mean,
you get a
that's
silver
pressure,
and you're going out of the Borscht Belt, the true Borscht Belt in Russia. But you may not know gymnastics, but we know athletics. We have all been around athletes our entire life, and we know the pressure points that come around here. Defoe, I'm going to bring you in. Oh, wait a minute. Go ahead, Godwin. Finish up.
Well, what I was going to say was, I don't know anything about gymnastics, but it sounds like she wasn't up to the task today, and that if she had continued, it would have been detrimental to the entire team. And so she, bowed out. She let the other teammates take over, and they did win silver. Silver is pretty darn good at the Olympics. Let's face it. So, I think.
Hey, let's be honest. Bronze is pretty good when you think about the tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of athletes and millions of athletes that are out there every single year, and they're just trying to get there.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Well,
just
I'm waiting for the Olympics. When the Olympics have beer drinking and watching NFL competition, I'm in there, baby.
I knew that was going to happen sooner or later, but we'll have to work on that. And they have yet to decide if they're going to have stock car racing in the Olympics as well, which might not be a bad idea. Defoe, here we go again. It turns out that we have a magnificent athlete who has decided to take one for the team, and everybody makes suppositions and everybody gets down on them. I've had these conversations before with our buddy Dave Lamont and others on this show. We cannot wait as a society to see somebody fail. And it's the one thing that I love about your show is you entertain, you inform, you do the interviews. You guys have a great time. You and Luby are enjoying it. And you're not taking these insipidly ridiculous phone calls from these nanobot naysayer idiots out there who just want to get on the phone and blast somebody. Just enjoy what we've seen. From her, we've seen history. Sit back and enjoy it.
It's unfortunate. I mean, holy Bella Caroli, what else can go wrong for NBC? I heard that they got in touch with Seinfeld earlier today to see if he wanted to make a comeback because they had everything riding on Simone Biles. If she was feeling pressure, certainly they had to go in the right direction because everything about this Olympic Games was centered around Simone Biles. All of the coverage was Simone Biles. They started teasing Simone Biles' performances as soon as they hadn't even finished the opening ceremonies. And you were seeing stuff about Simone Biles. I just happened to finish up doing my floor exercise here, so if I seem a little out of breath, I don't know how these people do it.
I have never seen you exercise in your life. Ever. Zero. Nada.
Tremendous pressure in gymnastics. You look, you have to be perfect. Then you're subjected to insane judging that looks like it was ordered by Jose Suleiman and the World Boxing Council, where the first 5 people give them a 5-9 or whatever the top score is, close to a 6. And then the next one is the 3-8, and it's a judge from Bulgaria who's walking out of there with an attache full of cash. A lot of strange things happen on the Olympic level, but it reminds me of the story that happened with the Miami Dolphins many years ago. And, we're not mind readers. It was interesting to see all the speculation about what Aaron Rodgers was thinking before he ultimately just walked into training camp and started taking snaps with the team on the day he was supposed to, after all this speculation and people trying to figure out what was on his mind and what was he thinking and what was he going to accept and what started it. And it was much ado about nothing. And Ricky Williams, remember when he walked away from the Dolphins? He was the scourge of South Florida. I mean, you could not have heard the comments were vile and very violent, and people were threatening all kinds of different things. They were never going to go to a game again. They would never talk to this guy. He shouldn't even be allowed to live. And I always thought, well, geez, if you were a child prodigy and you played the piano, and it might be the last thing on earth you want to do, and you can't help it that you just happen to be great at it, and everybody's egging you along. We see this a lot with, tennis parents and things like that, where they push the kid to a point. Happened with Jennifer Capriati, where at 14, she just wasn't equipped to deal with what was going to happen. Osaka may be some of the same. I used to see her playing at a local park here where I played tennis, speaking of exercise. And she used to train at the Pompano Municipal Tennis Center when she was 14, 15. And my friend and I would just go over and go, who the hell is that? At the time, she was ranked like 200th in the world. So worked her way all the way up to number 1. But when she got there, I mean, there was just a monumental amount of, as you said, attention and pressure. And who knows, what all of this money and had her head spinning and what it did to her. But Biles, everything was based on Biles in this Olympic Games. That was the shame of it. It happened while I was on the air this morning. And I thought that they must be passing out cyanide caps at the sales department at NBC. Like 30 Rock will never be the same after this, because all of those advertisers that were guaranteed certain rating points and are spending a lot of money. And by the way, what is Ray Donovan doing selling mattresses? When did that happen? That's the one ad I see running throughout the entire Olympic coverage that I've been watching. But
paying too much attention.
It was a shocker of a story, and so much. Yeah.
I mean, this was the team competition, and she did leave the door open, and the Gymnastics Federation has left the door open that she may come back in the individual competition. So it's not
I hope she does.
It's not as if it's a complete blowout, but I think that, guys, what we're looking at here is something that I've said for many years, and I think we've all experienced. Not all of them, but a lot of fans suck. I mean, let's be honest. We have people, Bruce, you've been to soccer, you've been to matches before. Defo, we've been to games all over the place in different sports. Godwin, you've been sitting there in the in the press box watching what happens at various racing events. You got fans who simply can't wait to say, you suck, your mother sucks, your daughter sucks, your wife sucks, and they just can't wait to be personal about it. It comes from fans. And what we're dealing with here is athletes used to be a little cocooned. But now you have, between social media, all these various sports networks that are out there, everybody, shows like this who can't wait and who've got to get a big name on instead of talking about things like we do in an intelligent sense. But the pressure on the athlete now to perform is greater than ever before. And I don't know about you guys, but I think we're going to see a lot more of this from athletes. I think we're going to see a lot of professional and college athletes who are going to say, that's it, I'm backing off and I'm out. Because it's just not worth it anymore.
I think sports have become such an incredibly big business that this is going to happen more often. As you were talking, as Defo was talking, I was thinking about Steely Dan and Deacon Blues. And, fans love the winner, but when you're no longer winning, you're the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. So you're no longer the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Very nice.
Hey, I'm trying.
The other thing, too, about the silver medal and finishing second, I mean, we're a win or you're a complete loser society. I'm watching them handing out silver medals, and then the interviews would take place, and you would have thought that they handed the athlete a subpoena for getting a silver medal. You're like, what's wrong with being the second best in the world by 2/100ths of a second in some swimming event? It's certainly no disgrace, but it's a shame. It's just, if you win, you're great, and if you lose, as you were saying, you suck. And it's unfortunate that we don't accept that there's greatness on many levels, and everything doesn't have to be a competition where the sole survivor and the only one that gets any recognition is the one that comes out as number one.
Godwin, I want to ask you something here in a little bit about other drivers here in just a second, but Bruce, go ahead. You're up first.
No, what Defo was saying, it's as if, sports competition has become the Hunger Games. And it's, either win or die.
Yeah.
But, I was starting to think, Defo was just talking about swimming. Look at Michael Phelps, probably greatest swimmer of all time. And he's had mental issues, and then both him and Ricky Williams, both with a penchant for the wacky weed. And now it turns out, Ricky Williams should make a comeback because he can smoke and play football now. It's everything he always wanted to do.
Well, see, and you're also,
he was ahead of his time. Yeah,
let's make sure
really was.
You pointed this out, and I want to make sure we make this point. I did this on my Facebook page today and had a lot of people come in here. Mental health is a serious issue in this country, and it has been for a very, very long time. But there are people who are ignoring it, who shove it into the dark recesses, who don't want to talk about it, say it's a private issue. It's not private anymore. That's the unfortunate part of it because of the mental health in this country. You can see it, and it has deteriorated over the years. What really cranked my ass on all this was, all of a sudden, there's been this discussion when Naomi Osaka said that it was a mental health issue. Then all of a sudden it was, oh, mental health. Oh, we have to deal with mental health. And then it went away. And now we have Simone Biles. Well, it could be mental health. We don't know. Again, we're not doctors in this. But she's pointing to the fact that it wasn't fun anymore. Oh, my goodness, mental health is a problem in this country. In 2 days, it's all going to go away, and nobody's going to talk about it again.
There's a couple of reasons.
We need athletes to come out in front of us and tell us that they're having mental problems, for people to actually pay attention to one of the biggest diseases in this country.
Well, the fact is, number one, I think mental health should be something that's covered by insurance. And for the most part, insurance doesn't cover that. So that's part of this. But in terms of sports and athletics, one of the issues is we know what a hamstring injury looks like. We know what a broken arm looks like. We know when it's a physical ailment, we know what it looks like, and it's hard to fake that. Unless, of course, you're just flopping on a basketball court or on a soccer pitch. But in this particular case, you can't see mental illness. If someone is depressed, but yet you think they're jovial and they're happy and they're fun and they're always got a smile on their face, that's the thing that we can't understand. We can't understand how somebody can smile and be depressed at the same time. And we put such a stigma on mental illness to the point where people don't want to come out because they don't want it to affect their job or their career, or their marriage or school or whatever it is. And until we really accept that mental illness is the single greatest thing that we should be putting our focus on, because if we have a society that's not mentally healthy, we don't have a very good society. I know I just opened up a can of worms in terms of, do we have a healthy society? But when it comes to sports, there's a reason why there are so many sports psychologists being employed by athletes and by sports franchises.
Well, no, first of all, we don't have a healthy society. That's part of the problem. All you have to do is look at the January 6th commission hearings today and start listening to what goes on there and have the people.
Are we going to get to that? Because that was just some scary stuff today.
If you want to get to it, absolutely. I'm going to throw it open here in a couple of minutes to you guys. We'll go anywhere you want. But we are a country that right now is a little more than a little screwed up. Hey, Godwin, I wanted to just get one last note on this from the mental health side of things, because Defo brought it up and we've talked about it, how in the Olympics and other places, you're first, you're second, you're third. And people get a derision in so many ways when they finish second or third. In NASCAR and in motorsports, you've got fields of 30, 40 drivers. And if you finish 15th, and if you're consistently back there, you don't get noticed at all. And how many times have you and I've been to the track, you much more than me, where we've seen fans go, you suck, you can't drive. And also the racism that comes out, that's part of it as well, that has permeated a lot of motorsports and NASCAR in the last couple of years. Look, the mental health of these drivers who never get a chance to finish in the top 5, imagine what they go through sometimes. I'm shocked more of them don't just simply walk away.
Yeah. Well, you're right. And a lot of those guys that finish in the mid-pack, when they do finish in the top 5 or near the top 5, it's like a win for them. And I've seen teams, celebrating on pit road after finishing a top 5 or 4 or something, and they don't generally finish better than 20th. So obviously the old adage is, if you finish second in a race, you're the first loser.
Well, yeah,
so
we've heard that for years, even more so.
Yeah, that's the mentality. And so it varies from driver to driver. I think some of these guys are just out there to have fun, really. I mean, let's boil it down. The guys that finish way in the back, they're there to have fun.
Isn't that what sports is supposed to be in the first place?
Right. But then the guys in the front, where you got the gazillion-dollar contract guys, that's where the pressure is. These guys they're being paid to perform, and so that's where the pressure is those guys that you see in the top 10 every week. And this year it's been a little odd, but you see basically the same guys in the top 10, give or take, every week. So,
well, you also brought it up too. That's what happened to Jimmy Johnson.
Most of the drivers that I've ever known are pretty stable, and I think it's for 2 reasons. Maybe 3. They love what they're doing, and the adulation that comes with that. For the most part, they're family men, and if they're not, they have fun on the road. And then they've got their second family, which is their team. And several times during my career, I've seen whole teams come to the defense of their driver on pit road if there's some kind of confrontation. So maybe NASCAR in that regard is a little different than stick and ball kind of sports. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, it's okay. It's a good.
I was going to say, Eddie B, I'm guilty of probably being the worst of it. I cursed out Jerry Bailey as he was walking back to the jocks room after a race at Gulfstream Park. This is a Hall of Fame rider who's won like 80,000 races. And to me, he was nothing more than the lowest level of bum at that point in time. So I've contributed to it. We all have as fans at some point in time. Well, said some things at an arena that you thought, well, geez, I know this is in good fun. But getting back to the overall issue of mental health, I think part of the problem is, and Bruce pointed it out, you can't see it. I mean, it's not like you have James Harden limping off the court there and he's grabbing the back of his leg. It may have been in existence for a long, long time, just wasn't talked about, was perceived in different ways. I remember the great story about Jimmy Pearsall in a book that he wrote, Fear Strikes Out. I mean, this was a guy with serious mental issues, and yet he was out there on the worldwide stage playing Major League Baseball, which was the number one game at the time. And it's a very interesting portrayal. Carl Malden, I guess, played the old man in the movie Fear Strikes Out with Anthony Perkins as Jimmy Pearsall. But and we remember it was great when, and it felt good when he finally kind of accepted some of the things that he was dealing with. And then would do, real clever things like run the bases backwards when he hit his 100th home run. He became a very endearing character. There was another guy who played for the Marlins one year, I believe, and was in Major League Baseball for a long time. Jim Eisenreich had some kind of condition where he had a tremendous anxiety about crowds, and yet he was playing in front of 50,000 in Major League Baseball. So this has been around for a while, and yet you'll see things like Urban Meyer faking a nervous breakdown so he can get out of the University of Florida contract that he had. And then with Naomi Osaka, unfortunately, it seemed like she was just taking a shot at the media, which that was one of the reasons I think the media was so willing to accept some of the resentment that was being expressed.
We can't crawl inside her brain and know she might have been, because quite frankly, the tennis media, and we could talk to our buddy Harvey Fialkov about this, who's on your show, and Harvey's covered tennis for a long time. Tennis is one of the most despicable media sports around the world. I mean, it equates right up there with British soccer, European soccer, and how much they hammer the players and treat them basically like absolute excrement. And that's the way.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of adulation there. I mean, certainly Serena Williams has been coddled by the media forever. I mean, she's pitching an absolute fit, throwing things and cursing out chair umpires and, kind of being disparaging about her opponent and, taking credit away. Yeah, it happened with Osaka, actually. That was one of the things Osaka said triggered her whole episode there, or was one of the roots of her problems that she was experiencing when she skipped Wimbledon and the French. But the media is the adulation level of the tennis media is incredible. I mean, even to players that are way down in the rankings. So I would disagree with that. I think, some of the European guys supposedly say things at these press conferences like you're playing like crap, you think you should retire. But, that happens. We used to have a guy, Al Lombardo, you were familiar with him, who would ask Don Shula if he could possibly be happy with a win no cover at a press conference.
What were the odds you were going to sneak Al Lombardo's name into this show somewhere? I don't.
I had to throw it in there because I love absurd press conference questions. I really do. When the guy asks some kind of really oddball, off the wall thing, and all the player really has to do, and I think that's what people were saying about Osaka. That's why they didn't necessarily buy this whole thing, and there may be great validity to it. Who knows? What's going on in her head, but. The questions are not all that deep at a tennis press conference. And all you have to do is say, well, I played poorly today. I want to congratulate my opponent and walk off.
See, you're opening up a whole other can of worms here. There's two cans of worms you opened, which we'll have to get to another time because I want to get everybody a chance.
We should go fishing, yeah.
You opened up two cans of worms here. One is that people are going after athletes these days because gambling has become more prevalent in every single sport, and it's even presented now by the sports themselves. So you have a lot of people who are wagering spitloads of money, and if somebody's a great player and they don't hit a home run in the sixth inning with 2 strikes to win the game for them, then they're out money and they
every right to yell and scream. Every right to yell and curse the guy out. No question. You agree, Bruce? I mean, the guy fails when you need him and you have money on the line. You have every right to start screaming at the top of your lungs.
You don't have the right. You don't have the right to say shit at a point like that because you went ahead and put your money on it.
I think it's more than just gambling. I think it is fantasy, which breaks down every single little thing.
But fantasy is gambling, Bruce.
No, I understand that. I just want to make the distinction between the two. But you also have, the stats and the figures, and you can literally know what's going on in any sporting event at any time because of the device that you have in your hand. I think, but it's, you had talked about social media and the role that social media plays in this. Well, a lot of athletes are very engaged on social media. A lot of athletes make a lot of their income on social media. So that plays into it. Not as much
anymore. There's a lot of them pulling away from it right now because they realize what a detriment it is to their career. And not only that, but the leagues themselves and the teams are telling them to stay off social media because all they do is
that's because a lot of these guys get themselves in trouble. Well, they say stupid things.
When
we were talking about mental health and dominating athletes and everything else, I started thinking about Tiger Woods. And I've long believed that number one, Tiger Woods, one of the reasons for his domination is every time he took to a golf course, he was not playing for money. And that's something that most tennis players, most golfers, where they're in individual sports and also this would apply to NASCAR as well. The better you do in your performance, the more money you're going to make. Well, Tiger Woods never needs to step foot on a golf course to make money. And I thought that was one of his biggest super strengths is he could go out there and play strictly for the win, never even think about, laying up, because he could just flat out go out there and play, because if he didn't make the cut, he didn't make the cut. He still made $1 million that week. And I think the fact that money has become so big, Simone Biles being the face of these Olympic Games, and NBC does it every single 4 years, or in this case, 5 years, where they pick an athlete and they promote them and they promote them and they promote them.
That's marketing. That's money.
Yes.
There's nothing. They've been doing that since the 60s and the 70s.
But here's my question. To you, Ed, and maybe Jeff and Godwin have a better perspective on this, because unbelievably, I'm probably the youngest person on this panel, and I can't believe that at my advanced age. Do the athletes have anything to say in the fact that they're made to be the face of the Olympic Games? Does NBC owe anything to Biles to go to her and say, we're going to make you the face of this, hope you're okay with it? Or do they just go, she's the best in the games, and gymnastics is what everybody watches, we're going to bill her as the face of the Olympics?
I don't think anybody has a right to. You certainly can go back to NBC and say, don't feature me. But I don't think that they really have the contractual right, or they can go out and they can say it. But is it really going to make any difference? I don't think so. Hey, Godwin, in NASCAR, you've got all kinds of drivers who are out there looking. They would love to get this kind of attention, but they just don't get it. And I think you said it best. In a sport like that, you've only got maybe, and I might be being facetious, maybe 10 drivers who really are popular, who really want to go out and play the social media game. I'm not even sure if a lot of NASCAR drivers and motorsports drivers even play social media much anymore. They let their PR people do it 24/7, and they stay away from it and go take care of something else.
Yeah. I think that it's kind of a split almost, because there are guys that do engage, and you can tell when it's not the PR person, because of the misspellings and everything.
Wait. That's how we knew that Trump was tweeting.
Yeah, exactly.
There it is. It took a while, but Silverman's a guy who's got to drop Trump's name in here, the first one. Very nice. Godwin, go ahead and finish before I get to this knucklehead again. Go ahead.
Well, if you go onto the media website for NASCAR, they have everybody's, Twitter handle, Instagram, everything, because they want you to, as part of the media, they want you to reach out to these people and develop relationships and whatnot. Now, as far as the general public, I'm sure that the drivers and some of the high-profile crew chiefs too feel like it's an obligation. And it's also an easy way to connect with your fan base.
Yeah, but do the drivers don't really care? Because I get the feeling that a lot of the drivers see it as a nuisance.
I don't think so. I don't think, they're a different mindset. Drivers are just different than other athletes. They're just, they're in their own little world over there. They put that helmet on, nothing matters.
That's very true.
I'm coming for you, Ed.
Eddie B in all sports. I mean, the social media point, and you know this from doing a zillion interviews, and Bruce and Godwin, you know this too, that almost every time you're presented with somebody, a possibility of an interview, they want you to make sure that you mention their Twitter handle, their social media pages and accounts, and all of the different ways that you can access material about these people, because that's what promotion is all about. And I think the athletes warmly embrace it. I don't think they're going to walk away from it. In fact, it's going to change the face of college sports, football and basketball forever, as we've already seen, where Nick Saban has a quarterback that has, a certain number of followers, whatever, a significant number. And the guy's already good for $1 million a year before he's thrown, I think he's thrown one touchdown pass. I think he got in a game last year. But, and this is going to be the new wave. So you're going to see all of these people are going to be more warmly embracing social media and things like that than ever before. And I don't know if there's an exception to the idea that almost every time we're fed an interview by somebody that's of national significance that they want you to incorporate, and they try to make sure you include
but the reason
Twitter
they do it
handles
is
and all of this stuff in every interview.
they do it because they're paid by a marketer, they're paid by an advertiser to do it, they're paid by more clicks that they get, and not only that,
Right.
but
So
if you want to talk about the fact that the athletes want you to be on social media, there is a control factor there in many ways that the athletes can at least control the flow of what goes on. They don't have to answer, they have to answer. It depends on what the situation is. And that leads me to the second part of that can of worms you opened, which is the press itself. Hey, look, guys, I mean, there are some people covering sports, and I don't care whether it's any one of the 6 major sports or anything, who are as dumb as dirt, who have no purpose being an interviewer, who don't know the questions, don't know the sport, ask the dumbest crap possible. And it's all it is just you can see the athletes doing it, and they're just going, yeah, okay, let me answer this question. Let me get away from this fool because you don't know the sport. You don't know what I'm going through. All I'm doing is just giving you a flat out cliche answer over and over again. Hey, Godwin, in NASCAR, I've had that happen. I've watched because I was in charge of the PR for a motorsport series for 2 years. And I saw people come up and ask questions. They were the dumbest questions in the world. And you could see the athletes, the drivers, were just clicking into automatic mode, and they're throwing out the cliches. Defo, all the events we've been to. Bruce, all the event doesn't make any difference. Part of the problem here is the athletes are sick and tired of having to deal with idiots in the press corps who don't know spit about their sport and ask dumb questions, ask personal questions, ask stuff that has absolutely nothing to do with the event itself. And that's that's one of the bigger problems, and that's my diatribe on that. I think
that's because we don't create quality journalists any longer. Journalism,
like Godwin Kelly, and I'll say that right out loud.
Look, you go back 15, 20, 25 years, you had quality journalists that were coming through the ranks. You had to pay your dues. You went to East Bumble, wherever, and then you went to another station or another paper, and you kept going up because of the quality of your work, not because of how good looking you were or how tight a skirt you wore or the type of suit that you wore or the fact that, the station needed a blonde on the set and they already had a brunette. All of these things are out of the window now.
You realize you're opening up another can of worms here that you're going to get some screaming here, but I'm going to back you up on this in some ways because yes, but that's been going on for 20, 30 years. It started on the anchor desk.
But it's worse now. But it's worse now because there's so many new outlets. There's so many things that need to be covered. We have this enormous amount of television, radio, social media, streaming, you name it. There's so many different outlets for events now, and there aren't enough quality people to cover those events. And then the really, really high profile ones, it's almost difficult to watch a sporting event now because you turn it on and you talked about a minute ago, somebody asking questions that doesn't know the sport. And that's happening everywhere. I call games, and I know that there are people calling all kinds of different sports that have no idea what really makes up that sport. They don't know the language. They don't know the game. They don't know how to call it. They don't know how to talk about it. And that is part of the problem now. And there are really, really talented people. There's really, really talented play-by-play guys. You and I have spoken about, the nature of talk radio, Defo excluded in that conversation, where they don't belong on the air, and yet they do.
But
yeah, we have an extreme knee-jerk reaction to everything also now, which is unfortunate. Godwin said something that is very true that always impressed me. Even though NASCAR was not necessarily my thing, I always enjoyed covering it because the guys that were involved, as Godwin said, they truly loved what they were doing, these drivers. And they started at a very young age, and they were involved in it. A lot of times it was a family thing that goes back with roots all the way to, Gramps. And there was some kind of real charm to that. I was just watching today a tennis match. Andy Murray, who is a very accomplished player, he's been through hell. He's had all kinds of injuries and problems, hip replacements, things that would preclude you from ever thinking about coming back and trying to play tennis at a professional level. And he's in there playing doubles for Great Britain in the Olympics, and he's giving it everything he has. He's totally involved in it. And you're thinking, wow, this guy really loves the game. Well, we used to appreciate that about certain players, like when Brett Favre, even though later on he might have become a bit of a scourge. But while he was playing, you thought, wow, he'd pat a guy on the back who just took his head off and say, hey, nice play. And you thought, wow, this guy really loves the game. And there's a lot to be said for that. But, we don't take that into account anymore. Everybody just wants to make contrived debates, unfortunately, and that's the thing that's promoted by media management, where you just argue over nonsense, like whether LeBron's the greatest of all time, and if you don't agree that he is, then all of a sudden you're an asshole.
Well, start there for a sec, because what you're talking about now is what permeated and what polluted sports talk radio. And again, I do this right in front of people, and I give you jobs because you've got the best show in South Florida, period, because you guys are having fun and you know your stuff. And between you and Luby and the guests that you bring on the air, people know what you're talking about, and you're having fun at the same time. But sports talk radio destroyed a lot of the basic attitudes, because I hear and have always talked about what I call contrived controversy. And that's exactly what they do. I'll never forget the program director at a South Florida sports talk radio station who stood up and said, "We need controversy." I said, "What if there is no controversy?" He sat down, folded his arms around himself, said, "Then we have to make it. We have to generate the controversy." I said, "That's bullshit, because all you're doing is you're playing to a crowd of idiots." He said, "Those idiots make us money." That's the end of it there. And that's when sports talk radio went off the rails.
It's filtered its way into TV. I think television, sports talk has taken over what radio was doing. And radio's kind of lost, where there are only a handful of topics that anybody discusses, which is sad. And Bruce, you addressed this. Some of the people you talked about, the qualifications. You used to have to know your stuff a little bit. And unfortunately, now with budgets what they are, I mean, you don't see much depth in the newspaper and any of the stories. You're not going to see guys writing brilliant feature stories on a regular basis like you used to have when they had staffs that went 25 deep at local newspapers.
Well, hang on. I want Bruce and I want Godwin to weigh in on this, but I want to also add this as well with regard to a lot of this. It's not just sports talk radio. It is what we're doing here right now. Okay, it is what they call OTT, over-the-top programming, which is social media programming. We now have the ability to where the four of us get together as professionals, and my company and we put on a professional show. We don't deal in propaganda. We don't deal in bullshit. We deal it straight out, and we have professionals on the air who can talk honest, and we don't have to make up a contrived controversy because we can deal with the issues here. But you have thousands, tens of thousands of people. All somebody's got to do is turn a camera on. Go to YouTube sometime and just put in the keyword. Just search. And you have these knuckleheads, morons, misinformations, disinformations, propagandists, wingnuts who are out there just spitting stuff out with no knowledge whatsoever of what they're talking about. And people fall for it. So it's
because they say it with a tremendous amount of conviction. Look, the kids call it clickbait, right? That's what it is.
And it's not just kids who call it clickbait.
Well, I was, having a little fun with
Listen to you, kid. Listen to you all of a sudden.
Well, I'm the youngest guy here, which is pretty sad. But the reality of it is, Jeff said that you used to have qualifications, and Godwin was talking, and you were talking about loving something. I don't know about you guys, but I got into this business because I loved sports and I wanted to be around it and I wanted to tell the stories. I didn't want to throw somebody under the bus. I didn't want to say something that was so damn outrageous that when I looked at what I said on Twitter, it was going to say it was liked 1 million times. I didn't equate
but
quality.
But unfortunately, if you don't do that today, then you're not working.
Well,
can we all say that's true? If you're not out there, go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to say, one of the things when Bruce was speaking, sort of lost is the language is kind of a lost art in today's society, and that's unfortunate. And I think that makes a big difference in the way sports are covered. I could not wait to get my Sports Illustrated back in the day, because it was written in a different fashion with a little more depth, and you had tremendous writers in there. And every week, even though it only came out on a weekly basis, just couldn't wait for it to hit the mailbox so I could start reading the stories. And you know, you had that in newspapers. You had storytellers on the radio. You had storytellers even on TV, and you know, you had great sports documentaries and things like that. And then, unfortunately, what we're doing in the media, sadly, morphed into this business of, you know, you say something really stupid, not you personally, Ed, but
Oh, I know what
you know,
you're
one
saying.
guy throws out, you know, Shannon Sharp throws out something that you really could care less about, and then Skip Bayless has to come back with something equally dumb that not even he could believe and make an argument for it for hours. And then this is what engages people, unfortunately, because a lot of people aren't turning to the other things, the alternatives that are out there. And, you know, unfortunately, as the business starts to, you know, get more and more contracted with newspapers folding up like a napkin and radio stations going away from local programming, I don't know what's going to happen, you know, with
Well,
TV on
I
that
mean,
front. But
you can talk to Godwin in that sense because Godwin worked for
yeah,
basically a small town newspaper, the Daytona Beach News Journal. But
and they should cover racing all the time.
he took that Godwin and the staff he worked with there and the people dedicated to covering the sport because NASCAR, of course, you know, from the Daytona Beach News Journal.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what is it. Maybe a bicycle, a 10-minute bicycle ride from the office to get over to the speedway. You know, it's right there.
few
But
miles.
you had a passion for it, and you took that passion and you created serious journalists, but also serious fun and serious entertainment, and you didn't treat it like it was candy. I mean, I think that's what
Right.
happens. You have a lot of people who are treating this stuff just like it's candy. They throw it out there. I treat this, look, when I turn the mic on and I get to talk to people, I treat this seriously because this is my fun. This is my passion. Godwin, I can only imagine how, you know, there used to be a really tight little knit group of NASCAR reporters, and it's grown and grown over the years. But still, you got some people covering the sport these days who wouldn't know a clutch from a carburetor.
Yeah, that is very true. Several years ago, I was brought into a meeting at NASCAR to talk about what they called community news. And by that, they were talking about websites that were run by individuals that covered NASCAR. And they told me, you know, this is going to be the wave of the future. And I was like, you're kidding me. Well, when you have your own website and you don't have any journalism background, you can pretty much throw anything you want out there. And I spent a good part of the last 15 years of my life chasing down these rumors from these, you know, private websites about this and that and the other that were just ludicrous. I mean, I'd spend a day on the phone trying to get a confirmation, and people would just laugh at me because they said, this is ridiculous.
Here, I'll tell you a story along those lines.
It was just a guy with a computer and a website, and he was just doing conjecture, you know. Like,
there were times when I was younger in South Florida sports, when I was a stringer. I used to string for ABC, NBC, CBS, Associated Press, UPI, RKO, Mutual Radio, the BBC, the CBC. I was the guy sitting at the games, and I was calling in reports from the different games, 5-second reports, 10-second reports. Look, Jeff, you remember those days as well.
I remember doing a lot of that. Yeah.
You do it too, and you're running into the locker room and you're grabbing sound bites, you're grabbing clips, you got to take it and you got to send it down the line and you got to unscrew the phone and you got to send it. I mean, it was archaic at the time.
People thought you were robbing the payphone.
But I will tell you that there were people who were public relations directors for major teams and leagues who would not give me a credential because they said, you're a freelancer and we don't recognize freelancers as being real journalists. I said, wait a minute. You mean so I can only do this if you work for a radio station or a TV station, then we may give you a credential. And I could name them, and a couple of them are watching the show right now, and I've talked to them over the years about this, where they said, you don't work for anybody. No, wait a minute. I work, and I had to get the head of programming, sports programming for the ABC radio network to call a team and say, Ed's our guy. If we want something from Miami and the teams, you have to give him a credential. And that opened it up. But I had to fight to get that credential. This business went down into the crapper, as soon as they started to give press credentials to people with websites, people with Twitter accounts, people with Facebook accounts. But just because you had a website, all of a sudden there was somebody, because it aged out, and you got to a certain point where there were younger PR people who said, oh no, this is how we're going to get our news. So they gave them credentials. And what they're doing is they're dealing in absolute bullshit and nothing but rumors. And a lot of them are still on the air today. Hey, some of them have made fortunes right now from what they did, and they're making a lot of money.
There's an entire news network.
Controversy and nonsense. Go ahead, Bruce.
There's an entire news network that falls under that category. Two things that came to mind was one of my favorite lines in a movie ever was from the American president. We've had presidents that were beloved that couldn't find a coherent sentence with two hands and a flashlight. And that pretty much applies to most quote unquote journalists today. But, I started thinking when we started talking about quality journalism and reporters and everything else, Ed and I, we talked about the coverage of the tragedy down in Surfside and the lack of quality reporting out of the South Florida television stations. And I started to think, how great would it have been to have had the same crews at 4, 6, 7, and 10 that covered Andrew covering Surfside?
Think of the difference. Think of the different kind of stories that you would have. I mean, but let's not hammer everybody. There's really good reporters out there, and there's
a couple here and there, but it's not like 25, 30 years ago.
I have Facebook accounts, and I have people that I talk to who are former journalists in South Florida and around the country who are no longer working. Why? They're too old. Nobody will give them a job anymore because they say they're overqualified. And not only that, but the management and the ownership of these stations has cut the staffs drastically to where what you have to do is you got to make the call, take the camera, edit it. It's what they call the predator, where you're basically going out and you're the one-man band. And it's impossible to do anything really serious at that point. You can't cover a story like that because you got to come in, make sure that you deliver the tape, the quote-unquote the tape, in time for one of these ridiculous shows that run from noon until 9 o'clock at night, local shows, and they're not saying anything. Hey, look, if you want to go off and say this, give me 1 sec. One other thing, and I'll throw this out. We're way over time, but I'm loving this because this is a conversation that needs to be had. You have TV stations today who say, go out, we got an accident. We got a dead body. As if there's any other kind of body. I tend to throw that out there. But go to the yellow tape. Go stand up. Do a live shot. We don't know anything. We don't know why this person is dead. We don't know why those 6 people in the apartment are shot yet. But make sure you get there and have us a nice big shot from 3.5 miles away to show us the apartment complex way off in the distance because we got to fill time. That's the nonsense that's happened today where they're not covering news and or sports because management doesn't want them to and doesn't want to pay.
Well, it's a lot more than that. Number one, as you're going off on that, I was thinking if I could only play Don Henley's Dirty Laundry in the background, that would have been perfect. But the other part of television news is, they're not paying anything. So you've got people that are coming, you got kids that are coming straight out of universities going to major markets. That wasn't the case 20, 30 years ago. You had to go and one-man band it in Podunk, wherever station market.
Podunk, that's fine, but they're doing it now in Miami, West Palm
Beach,
that's
my point.
Jacksonville.
There's no reason for a major television market to ever have anybody as a one-man band. They renamed it MMJ, right? Multimedia Journalist. Yeah. And that's a great way to pay less and to have less people on the payroll and not have to pay as many benefits. But the reality of it is that the people that can craft stories like Godwin, like Jeff, like you, like me, are so few and far between today. There's very few people that know how to tell a story, know how to research it, know how to put together everything and package it together and know when to hold it and fold it. And now it's just, I've got a bunch of crap and I'm just going to spew it. And I'm just going to get everything I know. It's just going to regurgitate out of my mouth. And that's the end of it. And I'm sure Jeff, you've got to be incredibly frustrated doing a show five mornings a week, and doing it the way that you do with the humor and the knowledge and the experience and everything else. And then you've got guys up and down the dial that couldn't put together a coherent sentence with two hands and a flashlight, but they can talk about how large somebody's breasts are and get ratings for it.
Well, you know what? I've always loved sports talk ever since I first heard it. Go back. Actually, John Sterling was among the first sports talk guys I ever heard, the Yankee announcer, and he did a pretty good job. He wasn't senile at that point, and it wasn't one of those deals where he was calling a home run and the second baseman was making a catch just behind the dirt. But I liked it in L.A. And in fact, in L.A. they had contrived debates all the time. It was always who's the better shortstop. I remember hours and hours of endless talking about whether Dave Concepcion, who was great, or Bill Russell, who was a decent fielder but an okay hitter, what was the better shortstop. But because it was L.A., people would call in, oh no, it's Russell, and I'm like, you guys are crazy, and that was the basis for a lot of it. But unfortunately, the people today just aren't interested in the depth or as Ed was pointing out, I don't know if you want to blame management. You just have a lot of guys that don't want to talk more than a couple of topics. And, how much time was spent talking about Aaron Rodgers? And we mentioned this earlier,
Ridiculous.
But I couldn't believe it. I mean, reams of copy written about Aaron Rodgers. Almost every show. I turned on a show the other day. Got in the car, and the first thing the guy says, well, you know what? We really got to take a look at this Aaron Rodgers thing. And you're asking yourself, so what happened there? Absolutely nothing. All of this speculation was just a complete waste of time. And yet that's what people are digging on, much more so than some of the stories that as you say, really make sports great.
You brought something up from Godwin's standpoint. Maybe that's one of the reasons why NASCAR kind of always continues to fly under the radar, because you don't hear contrived controversies that go national. You don't hear monster drug stories or assault stories or things that are popping out of NASCAR. It's about NASCAR is about the racing. I mean, Godwin can speak to this as well, but you got the occasional driver who'll go into a car, rip off his helmet or something, get angry, pound on a hood somewhere, scream, holler, bitch, and moan. But Godwin, it doesn't seem as if we have that in NASCAR, where you've got those screaming controversies that the whole planet wants to talk about at once. Maybe it's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, we do have silly season in NASCAR. Don't forget that.
Yeah, but silly season is kind of nice. It's okay. Who's going to change teams? Who's going to get a new sponsor? There's nothing evil. There's nothing destructive. There's nothing. You don't hear, for instance. You'll see a piece of video from a basketball player at a hotel elevator somewhere where he beats up his girlfriend. You don't see that in NASCAR. You don't see that in
I like when they come flying over the cars, though, in the pit row there after the race, and, they start throwing punches. It's great. It's like Larry Holmes and Trevor Berbick at the Hollywood Diplomat Hotel when he came into valet parking and jumped on Trevor Berbick. Larry Holmes did. But, I love that in NASCAR when the drivers are going after each other. I mean, Tony Stewart not being on the circuit now as an owner instead of as a driver might have calmed some things down. But nobody likes Joey Logano, right? I mean, and they're ready to throw punches at the drop of a hat. I love that about the sport.
Absolutely. They need to throw more punches. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Well, but see, look what we're talking about here. That's the fun part, because instead of the nonsense about, you never hear anybody talk about in NASCAR. Well, maybe it's because we don't spend a lot of time there, but I don't hear a massive conversation about who is really the greatest of all time. Is it still Richard Petty? Was it Jimmy Johnson? Was it Dale Earnhardt? It's not like people are screaming about it, and they've got to have it. Jeff knows this. And we talk about subjects on talk radio, it still is good to this day for whatever reason. I knew this back 1,000 years ago. If the calls weren't coming in, if they weren't lighting up, if it was 8 o'clock at night and nobody was calling a sports line on 610 WIOD, what's the thing you did? Well, Pete Rose really doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame. Boom! Holy God! I mean, phones would light up. You'd have people coming out of the woodwork going, what are you, crazy? Oh, yeah, you're exactly right. And you could still do it today. It's like you always have the standby argument. So, I mean, okay, so Godwin, what's the standby argument in NASCAR? that no matter what happens, it will always, if you got nothing else to talk about, it'll drive everybody insane?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not sure.
Okay. Maybe that's good. There's not one.
It probably has to do with, NASCAR is really personality driven. It's unlike other racing series where the car is the star. In NASCAR, the drivers are the star. And so if they get into a confrontation, then and then you're defending your guy, I could see something happening, on social media that way, where you get a battle. Like Kyle Busch and Brad Keselowski have outright said to the cameras that they don't like each other.
Good.
And I keep hoping, I keep praying that, at some point here during the season, they get into some sort of confrontation, and duke it out a little bit.
You and I both know that if Keselowski and Busch dropped the figurative gloves, took their mitts off and took their helmets off and started to beat the living daylights out of each other right in the pits, that video would be the most watched video in NASCAR history, and you would probably have the next week, the ratings would go up at least 10%. Of course, NASCAR would fine them, punish them, suspend them, but maybe NASCAR ought to have instead just put everybody in a ring and give them 3 rounds to beat the crap out of each other. Why not?
Yeah,
they could fight Logan Paul. Yeah, they could fight one of the Pauls there, or Mayweather.
Oh, God.
At this point, and make a fortune. Yeah.
We don't have enough time to talk about that.
About that, let me just make one point about the fighting in NASCAR.
Go ahead.
How many times have you seen that '79 fight between the Yarboroughs and Bobby Allison? They pull that thing out of storage like constantly, and that happened 40 years ago.
I'm trying to think of who I would really want to see. I would want to see, let's see, because everybody hates Kyle Busch. It's Kyle that they hate, right? Or is it Kurt? Which one is the more hated?
Well, Kurt's getting up there in age, and there's people are like, oh, he's in his 40s. He doesn't have that long to go. People get soft on drivers,
So I'm trying to think of who the big heavyweight fight would be. It would have to be Kyle Busch against who?
Cole Trickle.
Dick Trickle. You stop with that, for crying out loud.
The Iron Sheik.
I didn't say Dick Trickle. I didn't say Dick Trickle. I said Cole Trickle.
Cole Trickle, Dick Trickle. I mean, it's Trickle this, It's ridiculous.
I throw down the Days of Thunder reference, and it goes right over Ed's head.
No, it didn't go over my head. It's another, because it's Days of Thunder, and then you had Dick Trickle, who was based on the whole name Trickle came out. And besides, Days of Thunder was one of the absolute worst sports movies of all time, bar none, end of story.
Hey, in fairness, probably the worst movie, and certainly the worst sports movie of all time. And, not to speak ill of the dead, Jackie Mason, may he rest in peace, Caddyshack 2.
That's not a sports movie.
Whatever it was, it should never have been made. And there's a reason why it's no longer called Rolling Hills.
We know that. And why it's been long gone. Godwin, by the way, before I give everybody one last shout here, and I got a couple quick things I want to get done here, because thankfully, it's the beauty of this show and doing it on the internet. It just goes over because we got lots to say. But because Mr. Silverman brought it up here for a moment, I just have to ask, is it not fair to say that to this day, anybody in motorsports or NASCAR would rather watch 100 times, they would rather watch a Ricky Bobby movie than for 10 seconds watch Days of Thunder?
Well, the Talladega Nights was a good movie. I did enjoy that very much. And if you watch Days of Thunder for the miscuts and stuff, where they're racing at Bristol, and then they cut to a turn at Atlanta, and then they cut to a turn at Martinsville and Daytona, it's just nuts. There are parts of Days of Thunder that are funny for insiders.
Give me one.
Like the Bill France character. Bill France Jr. did not like that.
I thought maybe you were going to say the best part of it was Nicole Kidman, because to me that's
No, the stuff, they had stuff in there that was like insider stuff. It was, below the surface. And that's the stuff for me that makes that movie, tolerable, is seeing the things that they put in there that are for an insider type person. It's funny.
All right. Well, we've gone over, but we're going to take a couple of minutes more here with everybody, because I do like to give everybody a chance for one shot. I got a couple of parting shots I want to throw at everybody here, just for giggles and grins. But I'm going to give each of you now a shot. Anything, any subject, any topic, throw it out there. What is sitting in the craw right now, and what is really on your mind that needs to be discussed, or something that you would like to go ahead and throw out there and create contrived controversy, if you will. Godwin Kelly, ladies and gentlemen, God bless the man, puts his hand up. He's ready to rock and roll. Mr. Kelly, it's all you.
Okay, so I wrote this on a piece of paper. That's how important this is. Tony Stewart, Ray Abraham, some other people got together, and they put together, I don't know if you were around when they had the IROC series.
Yes, I was.
Okay, so they created a series called the Superstar Racing Experience. And it was 12 drivers, same car, 6 different tracks on consecutive Saturday nights live on CBS. And the darn thing was so popular, it almost eclipsed NASCAR's numbers. I mean, it came close to NASCAR's numbers for a regular broadcast. And so I just want to give kudos to them for putting together this. And Tony Stewart and Ray Abraham said this is for entertainment. This is, we want to see guys run into each other. We want to see fights on pit road, it's just for the love of the sport kind of thing. And so I'm happy to say it's coming back next year. And I'm happy to say they're not trying to expand on it. They're going to have basically the same format. So bigger is not better sometimes. I appreciate the fact that they did this. And I'm looking forward to it already when they have the next season starting next year.
Go ahead, screw with it. Make things a little bit. Mr. DeForest. Mr. DeForest, next to you, sir. What's on your mind?
I cannot believe that the rest of the world is caught up with the NBA basketball players in American basketball, and that we are losing at the Olympic Games. I don't know what's going on here. You suggested maybe with gambling, the fix might be in Ed Berliner. And I don't mean to put that on you, but what the hell is going on out there, as Vince Lombardi would say? Losing to Nigeria with a team comprised of NBA All-Stars is an outrage. That should never happen. They had 3 heat scrubs on the roster in Nigeria, and all of a sudden you have Greg Popovich, Hall of Fame coach, one of the greatest of all time, or at least recognized as such, and he can't get these guys to beat Nigeria, an Australian team whose 3rd best player was Matthew Dellavedova. And then they go out there and they end up becoming duck soup against the French, who, if it was a cooking contest, okay, I understand the French might be able to come up with something that tasted better than a burger. But the United States should not be losing in Olympic basketball. I think they could go get the original dream team in the condition they're in right now, and they still should beat everybody else in the world. I'm sorry, it's a little bit troubling. We invented the game. It's our sport. How the hell we're losing with this bunch of all-stars is beyond comprehension, and it's something that really needs to be investigated. Yes.
Want to know how we're losing? Because American professional basketball is one of the lower levels of real team skills in international basketball. They are worried about each other or themselves. They're worried about their own performance. They're worried about showtime. And because we in this nation, as far as the NBA is concerned, bring 16, 17-year-old kids and make them professionals before they've really had the chance to grow and learn the sport like they used to in at least a couple of years of college. So what we've
Eddie,
done
we have Kevin Durant, we have Damian Lillard, we have Devin Booker, who's sensational, 6 years in the league. These are well-developed, established stars, and we're losing to Rudy Gobert and a handful of Frenchmen. Are you kidding me?
You're talking about great players because you used to have a team concept. There's no team concept in the NBA anymore. They're all in it for themselves. The NBA is the most unwatchable sport in my opinion. I don't watch it. It's boring. It put me to sleep in a heartbeat. And that's what
Baffling
you're
question,
seeing.
my friend.
The French and other teams play an international style of basketball that is based not
Think
on the
about what
individual.
you're saying. The French are beating the United States of America, the game that we invented. I mean, Bruce Silverman and I could go out with Godwin 3-on-3. We should be able to take any three Frenchmen we find on the streets.
I would not want to see that. I would not. That would be really ugly.
I don't want to play
Silverman
that.
plays a mean post game. He really does.
Because it's all about the fact that the international game
And
is
Godwin can
international.
shoot. He can
They
shoot.
play a team.
Yeah.
They play a team concept. It still is the Showtime individual concept in the NBA. Watch the skills sometime of somebody. Yeah, they can pass. Yeah, they can dribble between their legs. Big deal. But when it comes to playing that team game, that patient team game that's needed in international play, we ain't got it. We don't.
It's a
they
disgrace.
could still win a medal.
It really is.
They could still win a medal, but they're boring. Doesn't bring anything to me.
I can't see it. This one, I can't buy that the rest of the world is caught up. That's the concept there.
Mr.
that we're looking at.
Silverman, you're up next. What do you got?
I'm watching the hearings this morning on January 6th, and I'm watching these four incredible police officers testifying. And the stories are gut-wrenching. The videos, some of them I hadn't even seen yet, beyond the pale, beyond criminal. And I start to think, wouldn't it be great if there were more than two members of the GOP that were on this committee and taking it seriously? And I also sit there and think, what would have happened if Jim Jordan had actually been seated on this committee? Would he have attacked these police officers? And part of me thinks he would have, and that would have been something that the entire world needed to see.
Which is why I said on my Facebook page last week that Nancy Pelosi blew it by not letting
I disagree
Jim
with
Jordan
that.
on
I
the
disagree
panel
with you.
because I want to expose these people for the
They've
negatives, for the
already
evil
been
that they.
exposed.
No. This is in front of a national audience on every network, except of course some local stations. But you have an opportunity to expose them for the evil that they are.
Here's the problem with that. I understand the mentality,
you understand
but
what
here's
I'm
the
saying
problem
about
I have
that,
with
at least that idea. Yes.
No. Look, every time you see a hearing and Jim Jordan is on it, it's going to be an embarrassment. Number one, the guy should be in prison for what he did at Ohio State. Number two, the guy should be in prison for the audacity that he doesn't go to his haberdasher and he buys a jacket that he can fit, that he only can be in shirts and a tie. Here's why I'm okay with him and Banks and others not being on this committee, because it needs to be taken seriously. It can't be a circus. It's more than just exposing what Trump did or what Gates did or what Mo Brooks did or any of these others, which I'm sure is going to come out in this. But it's about the seriousness of what's going on with our democracy and what's going on January 6th, what's going on with all these voting rights things. It needs to be taken seriously. And when you've got the clowns on, it's not going to happen.
The seriousness is the fight, because you made the point here as to why a Jordan should have been on this commission. Because is he going to attack the police officers? You're right. That was gut-wrenching testimony. The racism, the hate that was directed at these people. To hear a Jim Jordan or a Banks say something about that to try to counter that, you attack. I mean, you jump right in and you've got these. You've got them again making a statement to the entire world about how they have no respect for cops, no respect for the Constitution, no respect for the United States, no respect for human
but they're
beings.
they're all about the blue.
Hammer them.
They're all about the blue. I mean, that's
bull. That's
I'm being facetious.
I know you are, but I'm saying that's why we get in there and you slam them.
But I'm okay for this particular situation for them not to make it a circus and not to make it a mockery. Especially because when the subpoenas start getting handed out and Gates gets one and Mo Brooks gets one and Jordan gets one and Holly gets one and Trump gets
but they
one.
won't show up. They don't have to. That subpoena's toothless. Those subpoenas are absolutely
Let's see
toothless.
how it
when they
all
come
plays
from
out.
Congress.
But at the end of the day, I watched four police officers 4 guys that the GOP claims that they love, that you can't take a knee because if you take a knee, you're against them. And for these guys to be beaten with flags and flag staffs that had flags on them with a blue line on them and everything else, and for these clowns, for these hypocrites to say that they're all about the police and they're all about law and order and they're all about democracy when they're for everything but. I am happy that they're not on those committees.
Okay.
I'm happy that they're going to get exposed. I want Jim Jordan under oath lying. I'd rather him be a witness than him be a
Bruce,
questioner.
they're not going to show up. You can subpoena them until you're blue in the face, but a congressional subpoena means nothing. He and his attorney are going to say, I don't have to show up. What are you going to do, throw him in jail? There's no power there. So you don't have them. The inference here is if you've got a Jim Jordan saying something like that in front of the January 6th Commission live on television, you get somebody who's on the other side with a set of cojones, and you stand up and say, tell us that again. Do you care about cops? How do you feel about the fact that the cops were beaten with a pole?
I think it's going to come
him
out.
Answer.
I think it's going to still come out, and I still would love to see Jerry Sandusky in a cell with Jim Jordan.
There you go. Gentlemen, before we leave, I want to get your quick attention to something which is just a couple of finals. Usually we do a 3-for-all, and this is just some quick hitters, but I'm going to leave this on a fun note here today. At the Tokyo Olympics, a young lady by the name of Kaylee McCowan, who's a swimmer for Australia, wins a gold medal, stuns everybody. Her nation is watching. Up steps one of the interviewers from Australian television, and this happens.
What would you like to say to your mum and your sister for now?
Fuck yeah! Oh,
We'll get the beep ready. Get the beep ready.
I mean, go ahead. If you're in the moment, drop an F-bomb. I think that's awesome.
Can we change the 7 or 10 words you can't say on television? Can we scale it back and include that word? Because I think that word has reason.
That is one of the words you can't say on television, the 7.
But I think it should be one.
Personally, I think a favorite word of mine that is happening, and I've used it a lot of times in these shows, and you would not believe the mail that I get from friends of mine on positive or negative. I do use the actual phrase for bovine excrement a number of times because I think that's a word that should be used more often. I think
you've said it so many times today. It's like, well, let me ask you this. When you have a politician drop that word, should the news channels be bleeping it out?
No.
Because I think whatever a politician says, it should be aired without a beep.
Well, if they politician, anybody. If you're doing a live interview and if you're doing a live interview and it's there, it goes. And stop treating everybody like we're all 12-year-olds by going, oh, we're real sorry that somebody said something. We hope it didn't offend anybody. Oh, stop. Grow up. But no, I'm all for that.
I was doing a game years ago for the Fort Lauderdale Strikers, and we're on TV, and then the first half, Thomas Ronkin drops bullshit, and then somebody had to come into him at halftime and say, you can't say that. And then in the second half, he dropped shit, and you could hear my head.
He was actually dropping the words, not the real thing, though, right? I mean, he was dropping shit, but he wasn't.
It was a 3-man booth, and thankfully he wasn't next to me because if he was dropping it, I didn't smell it.
Okay, good. That's what I just wanted to make that point that he was dropping the word and not the actual element itself. I wanted to get to that. Second thing that I want to point out, and I want to find out how many of you will even get into this point here, but years ago, how many people here watch did you guys ever watch South Park? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Not a big fan.
Not a big fan. Okay. Several years ago.
I mean, I wasn't not a fan, but I didn't watch it.
Okay. A few years ago, the creators of South Park came out with a movie called Team America World Police. And one of the biggest things about this was it featured something called super marionation, which some of us of a certain age will remember because it's nothing but big stand-up puppets. Here's a clip from Team America World Police.
World Police, get down on the ground!
It is politically incorrect. It is insulting. It is racially insulting. It is sexually insulting. It is everything that South Park has always been. And Netflix is going to bring it back. They have decided to add Team America World Police to their current roster or to their upcoming roster. And social media, of course, that's where everything goes these days, is exploding. How could they? How dare they? Gentlemen, isn't it just as simple that if you don't like it, you turn? Here's the old, you turn the dial off, you click the dial, you walk away. I mean, Godwin, if you don't like it, you don't watch it, but does that mean that you still have to pull it completely and not let? I say go ahead. Be politically incorrect. Why not?
I'm actually a big South Park fan. They actually did a couple of shows about NASCAR racing.
Yes.
And they had a character in there that looked a lot like the guy on this screen here.
I think he's pointing at you, Bruce.
No, it's this right here. The round head, no hair, mustache, glasses, and
they owe me money.
Yeah, I think one of those guys must have come to a NASCAR race at Daytona. Because unless I'm completely stereotypical of a sports writer from that sport, So no, Jeff, that's great. To me, that's great news. Those guys are very ingenious.
It's a funny movie, and I've watched it. You just got to get past the whole big super marionation for a moment. Jeff, what do you think? Political correctness, incorrectness, just let it fly?
I'm not a big fan of political correctness. It's ruined a lot of careers, unfortunately. We've seen it with sportscasters, where a guy would say one thing, in 30 years, the body of his work would go right out the window, and all of a sudden, a guy can't get a job anymore. It happened with the guy in Seattle, the basketball announcer, this guy Adler that was doing tennis. I really hate the whole knee-jerk reaction, overreaction to everything that goes on. Censorship on that level is not called for. And, people should learn to laugh a little bit. Some of the greatest humor is sarcastic and political humor. And if you're going to cut all of that out or immediately make judgments about people because they're willing to, listen to more than one line of thought, then it's a big mistake. So I'm a fan of bringing that back. I'm a big fan of the arts. They should be as open as possible. And all of these immediate judgments about people because you said something about being Jewish or this or that. It really is just a disgrace. It's unfortunate that society's gone in that direction. And that we're judged so harshly, where you could say one thing and it shows up somewhere on some guy's cell phone, and next thing you know, where you're having your whole life ruined. And, it's unfortunate. It's happened to any number of people, including some people that we know.
Look, if they can take things like Bridgerton, which is huge right now, and call that an art form, this is film. It's art form, and I'm an actor. I work in Screen Actors Guild, so I'm all for it. Bruce, what do you think? Political incorrectness, correctness, drop it, leave it? What's up?
No, what it comes down to is the people that speak out the most about the cancel culture are the ones that actually want to cancel culture. And if you really think about it, you got politicians that are saying, cancel culture. And then the second that something that they don't agree with comes out, whether it's, a South Park marionette show or some, movie or an interview or whatever it is, they're the first ones that want to cancel it. And I think this whole cancel culture and woke, like those are two words and clickbait. Let's put three phrases in there. Woke, cancel culture, and clickbait. Let's remove all three of those from the vernacular.
Well, see, I'll keep clickbait because to me, I've always said in a lot of the educational things that I do and a lot of the speaking engagements I do about the media, I talk about legitimate journalism and clickbait media. To me, that's the difference between what we have right now, and there's a Grand Canyon-esque divide between the two of them. So I think clickbait media has to stay, but I'm with you. The whole cancel culture and woke are words that people are just falling back on. Here's how you want to be woke.
That and socialism.
If you're insulted by South Park or Team America or this show, don't watch. Okay.
We're
I don't know why you wouldn't watch this show. We're the most intelligent show on the internet right now across YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. I don't know why you wouldn't watch. but that's another story.
No, look, we're a society right now. We're a society right now where everybody has to find the boogeyman, right? If you can't find the boogeyman, you have to find the boogie word. And socialism is a boogie word right now. If you want to throw somebody off in an argument and you just say that's socialism, that all of a sudden freaks everybody out and it changes the conversation and it deflects and everything else. And to bring this conversation all the way back to the beginning when we were talking about mental health, there is a term that I wish more journalists would use and apply.
I quit.
And that is the word projection. I wish that more journalists would listen to things that politicians say or athletes say or whatever it is and say all they're doing is projecting. What they just said and what they're putting on somebody else is really about them. That's the mental health word of the day.
I will tell you right now that there are sports reporters, sports hosts, news reporters, news hosts, news commentators, hacks on in prime time that you can watch. I can tell you, matter of fact, I'll write them down and I'll send them to people if you want. No, I won't, because I'll get in legal trouble. Who have no clue of the people that they're talking to, who are handed a series of questions, who ask the questions over and over again, write what they're told, and they do not go in another direction because they're not educated enough to ask the next question and to listen to somebody and then react. Because I think, Godwin, you know this, you interview these guys all the time. You listen to what they say, and they can drop one or two words, and all of a sudden it takes you off in another direction, but that's the direction you've got to follow. That's called being a reporter. Yes?
Right. Yeah.
Which doesn't happen anymore. Jeff's done it when he's interviewed people on the air. I do it. Bruce has done it. If we had a little bit more of that, I think people might trust the media more, but instead trust me when you're watching a lot of local television, specifically local TV, all scripted. All scripted and very little honest reaction.
Ron Burgundy.
I'm telling you, man. They stole my hair.
If it's on the teleprompter, if it's in their ear, they can handle it. But if they have to do it on their own, they're not equipped.
I like scotch. Scotchy, scotch. Down into my belly. Let's next time, I'm going to have to open up a show one time with a Ron Burgundy bit. Let's go ahead and do that. You guys are definitely coming back again because we have now set another record for the longest version of Free for All. And we did it because we could actually go another 2 hours because the conversation has been that good. So let me remind everybody of where you can find these gentlemen, because Godwin Kelly and I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. I have had him on the shows before, and we are going to have him again. Nobody knows motorsports better than Mr. Kelly.
That's right.
Why I did English, I have no idea, but it sounded good.
Right here.
It sounded wonderful.
There.
Isn't it funny whenever you talk with an English accent, you sound smarter. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, LinkedIn. It is at Godwin Kelly. You will find him there.
Yeah, I ain't fancy.
Mr. Silverman, of course, you can hear him calling soccer. He and I get together, and boy, we've had some arguments before when it comes to soccer and some issues, but I love it because they're intelligent. You can reach him at Facebook at Bruce Silverman, Twitter at Silverman Show, and Instagram, Silverman on Sports. Real easy. Nice job. Well done, as a matter of fact.
I try.
And I have said this several times in this show, and I will say it again. South Florida radio is a pitiful, sports talk radio is a desert of talent. It is vacuous, is what is there. But the only show that I listen to, I don't catch it every day, but I listen, him and Luby, Mike Luby Lubitz, and a great cast of characters on 940 WINZ in South Florida, Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 a.m. Also, you can catch it on the iHeart app worldwide. And is there any place else it's heard other than the app? And
12:30 The Zone out of Palm Beach also.
Oh, okay.
12:30 a.m.
Okay, I just was thinking
that's our big syndication, our big 2-station syndication.
Hey, that's okay, man. It should be on a lot more stations, trust me. Also, you can get a hold of Jeff Facebook at Jeff DeForest 19 because there are 18 before him who aren't nearly as talented. No, it's Jeff Forrest 9. Jeff DeForest 9. I'm sorry. That's 8 more before him who aren't nearly as talented. And Twitter is Defo Show, so you make sure you catch him there. Gentlemen, cannot thank you enough. This has been brilliant. I am getting all kinds of text messages here, people coming in enjoying it. They say that, Bruce, it was wonderful for you to go ahead and have your hair done for the event. Marvelous.
Hey,
you know,
I had it shined up just for you, Ed.
And Godwin has got a Estes Park, Colorado hat on, which makes it even better because I love Colorado to tears. And Jeff was nice enough not to have horse racing on over his right shoulder during the show.
I missed the 4th at Saratoga. I'm sorry.
Oh, look at this. Godwin leaves us. Oh, come on, Godwin. You're not supposed to leave early. What are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do with these guys? Oh, my goodness. Well, anyway, gentlemen, thanks so much. And we'll
Enjoyed
talk
it very
to you guys
much
again. It is always a
Thanks a
pleasure.
lot.
Thanks for joining us. Join us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all across the board. Make sure you do it there. And don't forget, this show will be available on all the major audio podcast platforms to listen to and download. Just go ahead and look for Ed Berliner, look for the man in the arena, but look for my name, and you will find it there. Thanks to Godwin, thanks to Jeff, thanks to Bruce. Thank you, everybody. Until we meet again, I'm Ed Berliner. Rock on, true believers. See ya. And let's say goodbye, which is even better sometimes if you're able to do that, because Ed, all he has to do is hit the damn right button.
You're still here?
Are you not entertained?
It's over.
All right, hey. All right, good job, guys. Let's just not come in tomorrow. Let's just take a day.
Go home.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Go.
That's all, folks.